This is a mini Phalaenopsis that I rescued from Lowe's. All these plants are in these pots that have no air. They can't breathe. There's no holes in the bottom. There's a hole in this little plastic cup, but yeah, they can't breathe. And so they get drowned with water and then dry out. But yeah, the roots can't breathe. So today we'll be repotting this little mini Phalaenopsis orchid. So ideally you would want a pot with a lot more holes on the side, but in a pinch you can just add some corks so that way it won't get soggy and root rot in the bottom. And then we're going to take this little guy and soften up these roots. This is like hard as a rock. Run it under some water. So luckily this guy, the roots are still okay. If they were dead, they would not be green. They would be brown and brittle. We would have to cut them off, but this one's still okay. And we softened up the moss, and we're going to break it up and put it in the pot with some additional corks so that the roots can breathe. It needs to be able to breathe, so having the corks in there helps it. Prevents root rot. When you're watering, be sure you don't get any water down in the crown. You can dry it with a paper towel or just blow on it to get all the water out of the crown. That's important. Okay, so here's the mini Phalaenopsis in its new pot, and I usually keep mine outside, so I have some cats that are trying to see what I'm doing here. So the new pot has corks throughout the moss under there to keep some airflow to the roots. The aerial roots you leave out, like whichever roots were already out when you got the plant, you want to make sure they stay out. They're used to getting air, and you want to make sure they don't get covered up. So there's some roots down in here that are still showing. And then you keep it in indirect, no direct sun, just indirect but bright light, whether it's indoors or outdoors. It just can't get below 60 degrees. I like mine in clay pots. If you use a basket or something else, you may need to water them more often, but the biggest thing with these guys is people overwater them. You don't need to water them until the medium is dry, and then you see roots turning silver or white instead of green. Mine in the Florida heat, outside in clay pots, I water them once a week. In the winter, less. You do fertilize orchids every time you water them. Well, once a week. Sometimes you have to water them more than once a week, but usually not. You do a really weak orchid fertilizer once a week. If they're in flower, you don't fertilize until the flowers are gone. And in the winter, you can fertilize less. The flower spike will start after the first cold spell, and then a few months later you'll have flowers. So usually by early spring or even late winter you'll have some flowers for the Phalaenopsis. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments.